The story begins with a young boy named Chris lying in a coffin. He is only 12 years old and has died in a terrible way. There are bite marks on his neck, which suggest something very dark has happened to him. A small crowd has gathered around his coffin, and their quiet conversations and fearful looks create a heavy feeling in the air. People point at the bite marks and talk about how there is no blood left in Chris, leading them to think that a vampire might be involved in his death. Some villagers are shocked because they have never seen anything like this happen in their peaceful village before. The mood is tense as they begin to suspect a little girl named Sooha who is hiding behind a tree. Sooha arrived in the village not long ago, and ever since then, strange and bad things have been happening. Not too long ago, Chris's house caught fire, leaving everyone unsettled. Now, with his death hanging over them like a dark cloud, they can't help but wonder if the bad luck is somehow connected to Sooha. As the villagers mutter among themselves, some being to wonder whether the rumors about that strange girl is true. As Sooha watches all this from a distance, she suddenly has a flashback. It's a bright day, and she's sitting at the base of a tree when a young boy comes up to her. He tells her that people call her a vampire, and she looks up at him in disbelief at his boldness. However, he has a smile on his face as he asks her if she really is. She looks away, offended, but he stretches forth his arm and introduces himself, saying his name is Chris. He admits he has never seen her out in the daylight before, and then he asks for her name. Still, she looks away, feigning annoyance. He teases her, and she tries to tell him her name, but he beats her to it, stating that he already knows her name because she is famous in the village. With a stern look on his face, he tells her that people in the village have been gossiping that she is the vampire who moved here. In anger, she replies that she is not a vampire. When he speaks again, he says that people are talking about how she has bounced around different cities, how she doesn't come out during the day, how she walks around alone at night, and even how she eats pigeons. This time, Sooha screams to defend herself, insisting that none of it is true, especially the last part. Chris has a relieved look on his face as he says he had thought so. Sooha drops her shoulders in exhaustion, wondering why there are such weird rumors going around about her. Chris advises her to come out during the day so that she can tell everyone that the rumors are untrue. However, Sooha believes that no matter how many times she tries to clarify, no one would ever believe her. As a child, her parents had discovered that she had a strange ability and told her never to use it or show it to anyone, fearing that people would misunderstand her. They warned her not to draw any attention because if others saw her using that ability, even by accident, they would think she was a vampire. Even then, Sooha had wondered why she was cursed with such an ability. What if she really was a vampire? She was scared that the rumors might be true. As she gets lost in her dark thoughts, Chris interrupts her, telling her that he doesn't believe for a second that she is a vampire. He smiles down at her reassuringly and shares that he was born with a limp and that many people gossip about those who are different. He reveals that once someone said his parents regretted giving birth to him because of his limp. Likewise, he was scared that it might be true, but not anymore, as he knows for sure that his parents love him. This realization has helped him ignore stupid gossip. He laughs and stretches out his arm once more to Sooha, telling her that they should be friends. This time she takes his arm and agrees to be his friend. It's her first time having a friend. In the following days, they play together and engage in various fun activities, filling their days with joy. Wanting to share her secrets with someone is something Sooha has never experienced. But with Chris, things become different. She confides in him about her secret, and he is surprised. When she tries to tell him that it's just a weird ability, he disagrees, reassuring her that it is a special ability and very cool. It surprises Sooha that Chris is not scared of her, despite her worries about possibly being a vampire. He tells her he is not afraid because he knows her. However, she still fears that the rumors might be true. To make her feel better, Chris asks her to try biting his neck, but she recoils at the request. She refuses, telling him that something might go wrong, but he reassures her that it's okay because he trusts her. Still uncertain about herself, Sooha hesitates. Chris informs her that she doesn't have to do it right now, but when she believes in herself enough, she should promise to bite his neck. As Sooha watches him, she realizes that for the first time in her life, she has someone who trusts her more than she trusts herself. Meeting Chris is the best thing that has ever happened to her. She enjoys every moment spent with him and looks forward to what is to come. She asks him if they can go see fireflies together next week and tells him that she will come to him this time, to his village, his home. Since he has always been the one to approach her first, this time she promises to visit him. The following week, Sooha goes to look for Chris at home, but encounters an unbelievable sight. His house is on fire and he is still inside. There are people gathered outside, watching the inferno. By this time, the entire ceiling has collapsed. As she tries to move forward, someone tells her that she can't go inside because the fire has spread too far. But she thinks to herself that she must save Chris because he can't run. With that, she stomps away with her superhuman speed towards his house. Even as she runs, she recalls her parents' words warning her not to use her ability and not to reveal it to anyone, fearing that people would misunderstand her and think she is a vampire. But Sooha doesn't care. She speeds towards the burning house because it doesn't matter what people say or what they think of her. She won't let their dumb words lead her by the nose. She crashes into Chris's house and looks around for him. Likewise, she has made up her mind to use her ability to save him. She finds him trapped under a pile of rubble and casually lifts it up as if it weighs nothing. He looks up at her in surprise and relief, glad that she came to save him. With tears in his eyes, he tells her that regardless of what people say about her, he trusts her, because someone with such a kind heart can never be a vampire. Together they cry. Until now, Sooha had thought that there was only misfortune in her life. But now she knows that all those hardships were stepping stones to meeting Chris and learning to value him as a friend, to never lose someone as precious as him. But now all of that is lost, because presently Chris is lying dead in his coffin and is no longer with her. In the next scene, we see a magnificent building, a school. It has a new student, which hasn't happened in a while. We see two people walking in the hallway, a woman and our little girl from the village. Sooha is all grown up now, indicating that this is several years later. Her guide introduces her to Decilis Academy, explaining that the academy operates as a night school with classes starting at 9 p.m. Though it might be confusing at first, she reassures her that she will get used to it soon. As they continue to walk, the woman informs Sooha that there aren't any rooms available in the new dormitory, so she has been assigned to a room in the old one. However, she adds that it might be messy since no one has been using it. As they walk, the guide tells Sooha that the school rules do not permit students to exit the campus after sunset. She specifically advises Sooha to stay inside for her own safety, especially in light of a recent murder nearby, which is rumored to have been committed by a vampire. The woman goes on to say that since the school is well known for its strict entrance system, students shouldn't run into any vampires on the school grounds. However, it may be dangerous outside. As they walk and talk, they run into a male student, and Sooha is startled by him for a moment. We can't really blame her, though. He's smoking hot. The boy looks down at her, apologizes, steps aside, and walks away. She turns back to watch him before continuing with her guide. As they walk away, the boy turns around and watches them. Maybe he's got his eyes on her too? Finally, they reach the end of the hall. Her guide explains that this would be her room. She apologizes that it's in a far corner, away from the other rooms, but assures her that a new room would be ready as soon as there is a vacancy. Sooha replies that it's fine and that she likes it here, then thanks the woman. Her guide tells her to settle in and get some rest before walking away. The moment the door closes behind Sooha, she takes in the extremely messy room and can't believe her luck. She jumps in excitement because she finally has a room. As her eyes sparkle with joy, she hopes that her guide hadn't noticed just how happy she was. Sooha recalls that this is the best high school in Riverfield, known for its strict policy against vampires, so she will never be mistaken for one. She cries happy tears because people have always thought she was a vampire, all because of her strange abilities. Thanks to that, she had to move over and over again. A dirty room in the corner is absolutely no big deal. She just has to clean it up. Hurrying about trying to tidy the room, she suddenly remembers how her stupid ability has done her no good. Then, out of nowhere, she has a flashback of when she saved Chris, recalling that this is the only good thing her ability has ever done for her. But now she realizes she will never be able to see such trust in anyone else's eyes again. The creaking of her door interrupts her thoughts, and Sooha turns around to find someone at her door. That's right, it's the smoking hot boy from earlier. He looks at her in mild surprise because he has seen something quite amusing. Sooha is carrying her entire bed above her head like it weighs nothing. They both freeze and stare at each other in an awkward silence until the boy finally closes the door behind him. He stutters, saying he left his book in her room. Shaking off her shock, she quickly sets down her bed and rushes to explain herself. She tells him that what he just saw isn't what it looks like, and even though he might not believe her, because nobody ever does, she insists that she really isn't a vampire. As she struggles to find the right words, tears start streaming down her face, surprising the boy. She feels like everything she worked for to get into this school is ruined. The boy calmly tells her that he believes she isn't a vampire because he trusts her. She looks up, shocked. He goes on, explaining that vampires can't enter the school because it has strict rules. Plus, he can see how upset she is. With gratitude in her eyes, Sooha thanks him for believing her. She says she's sure everyone else feels the same, but she really doesn't want to be thought of as a vampire. As she says this, her eyes suddenly flash with intense hatred, making the boy take a step back. A cold sweat breaks out on the boy's face, and he looks down, appearing a bit sad for a moment. Meanwhile, an excited Sooha starts chatting happily. She explains that she is really thrilled to transfer to this academy because there are no vampires here. The boy forces a smile and tells her she's right. Sooha continues with great joy, saying she won't be mistaken for a vampire anymore, which makes her really happy. The boy tells her it seems like she has had a tough time, and she replies that it's difficult to put into words. She mentions that she has been mistaken for a vampire countless times, all because of those stupid vampires. She explains that her parents told her that before she was born, vampires were just fictional characters in stories, but now she doesn't understand why things have changed. The boy looks down again, seeming lost in his thoughts. Suddenly, Sooha realizes she has been talking too much and remembers that the boy came here for his book. She asks him where it is so she can help him find it. He says it's fine and that he can get it himself, but she quickly searches and finds it. She's surprised to see that it looks ancient. The boy tells her he has a thing for old books. Then, she asks if that's why he chose Celis Academy, since the school has a reputation for having plenty of old books. The boy seems at a loss for words and struggles to answer, but he quickly agrees. She doesn't notice his discomfort and starts chatting again. She shares that her hobby is reading too, and since she didn't have many friends, she spent her time reading. Not only that, but she remembers that the only friend she ever had was Chris. Likewise, she adds that she has never seen anyone read books like this, because not many people read these days. Furthermore, she asks him what the book is about, and he looks confused for a moment before saying it's just some old stories. He seems to be waiting for her to hand over the book. She then says she would like to read it later, and he smiles awkwardly. When she finally notices his discomfort, she apologizes and he asks why she's apologizing. She explains that she didn't realize she was keeping him for so long because she got too excited. She adds that it's been a while since someone talked to her like a normal person. He tells her not to worry about it because he enjoyed talking to her. She hands him his book and he thanks her, saying he will leave now. She says goodbye, and once the door shuts behind him, she realizes she should have asked for his name and suggested meeting again. Not only that, but she thinks it was her chance to make a friend, and she messed up. Suddenly, the door swings open again, surprising her as the boy comes back. He says he forgot to ask for her name, and she gets flustered, telling him her name is Sooha. He says it's a pretty name, and her face heats up even more. She fidgets, and there's an awkward pause until the boy asks if she would like to know his name too. She stutters and quickly says yes. Then she asks for his name. He laughs with his eyes closed and points out that she's asking because he mentioned it first. However, he still decides to tell her. He says his name is Haley and that he is in 12th grade at Decellis Academy. He then asks her to be his friend, and she agrees, saying she would like that. Finally, he waves goodbye, saying he will see her around, and the door closes behind him again. Sooha can't believe her luck in making a new friend, a smoking hot one at that. Later that day, Healy is in the hallway when someone calls his name. He turns around to see a boy with red hair named Gino. Gino tells Healy he has been looking for him since the guys are about to head out without him. Healy apologizes and explains that he was talking to the new student. Another boy pops up behind Gino, curious about the new student, saying he heard there's a girl who just transferred. Healy confirms this and mentions she's in the old dormitory where they used to hang out. This surprises Gino, and he seems worried about the idea of the new girl living in that uncomfortable storage room. The other boy says he liked that spot because it was in a corner where the sun doesn't shine. He seems sad that they won't be able to go there again. Healy says they might be able to, if they become friends with Sooha. He addresses the other boy as Shion, telling him that it's possible, since Shion is good at making friends. Two other guys walk over and join the conversation. There's absolutely no end to the gorgeous men in this school. The one with blue hair, Solon, asks Healy what he means by becoming friends with a human. Shion and Gino turn to look at the newcomers. Healy explains that he told the girl his name and asked her to be friends. He mentions her name is Sooha. The gray-haired guy, John, tells Healy that Solon is right and they shouldn't hang out with other kids. Healy understands Solon's concern but says there's something different about Sooha. She's similar to them, but not exactly the same. Shion asks if she is one of them, and Gino is curious about how she was able to enter their school. Solon looks angry and says there is no more one of them and that they are the only ones left. Healy admits that Sooha is not one of them, but insists she is different. He says he feels drawn to her for some reason. Shion teases Healy, asking if he has fallen in love with Sooha. Solon replies that they don't have emotions like that and shouldn't have them. He says there is no point in befriending a human. John agrees and adds that being friends with the girl will only bring trouble. Solon then says they should all stay away from the new girl. Speaking of the devil, Sooha chooses that moment to show up, and she hears him. Sooha's face turns red as she realizes what Solon means. There's an awkward pause while Healy looks at her, and she knows he's noticed that she heard. He calls to her, and soon his 4 friends turn to look at her too. She feels bad, thinking they all hate her already. She suddenly remembers kids from her past who called her a vampire and didn't want to play with her. It feels just like back then, even though she really wants to get along this time. She's sure they're looking at her like those kids used to. But when she opens her eyes and looks up, she sees something different. All of Healy's friends have a look of wonder on their faces, which confuses her. She wonders what's going on and why they're staring. Shion is the first to move. He walks over with his hand out and says he's heard about her since she just transferred today. Shocked, Sooha shakes his hand and says it's a pleasure to meet him. Next is Gino, who jokes that Shion is a troublemaker and tells her to stay away from him. He offers to be her friend instead and pushes Shion aside. He introduces himself and shakes her hand, and she says hello back. Then comes John, who introduces himself as well. Way to go with the betrayal, John. He tells her not to mind what she heard earlier and reassures her that none of them agree with Solon. The blue-haired pretty boy clenches his teeth, furious by John's sudden switch, and bites back a reply. Sooha thanks John, then glances at Solon, wondering why he seems to dislike her. He notices her looking and turns away, refusing to introduce himself. This makes her sad, as she senses that he definitely hates her. Though she's used to this kind of reaction, it sort of stings. Still, it's the first time anybody is welcoming her like this, especially since the guys seemed cold at first. She wonders if they're all Healy's friends and what he must have told them about her. Solon asks the others what they're waiting for so they can leave, but John tells him to go ahead without them. Really, John? Finally, Healy speaks up. He asks Sooha where she's headed, and she says she just wants to explore the campus. He offers to give her a tour, starting with the library, since she likes reading. Sooha is happy about this, and Xian asks if he can tag along too. She agrees, and John jumps in, saying he'd be glad to show her around as well. Gino suggests they all go together, leaving Sooha a bit flustered. Solon looks at them in disbelief and asks if they're really going for just a campus tour. Xian says Solon doesn't have to come, but Gino insists he should join them. A little later, they all arrive at the library and Xian begins introducing it. Sooha is impressed by all the books and asks Healy about the one he was reading earlier. He explains that it's really old, so she would need special permission to borrow it. When she looks disappointed, he promises to tell her about it when he's done reading it. She thanks him. Xian keeps showing her around, leading her through the 9th grade classrooms and explaining where the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade classes are. He mentions he's a 10th grader like her and that John and Gino are in the 11th grade. He intentionally doesn't say anything about Solon and Sooha doesn't ask. When she looks at Healy, eager to know about his grade, Xian explains that he is in the 12th grade. It surprises Sooha, and she comments that even though they're in different grades, they seem really close. She seems to think it's really cool, but Xian flinches, and the group falls into an awkward silence. Healy jumps in to save the moment, telling her they all grew up together. Sooha looks at him in disbelief because there's no way they can all be brothers. She asks him what he means by his statement, and he tells her that they're all from the same orphanage, and none of them have parents. This surprises her, and she apologizes. The others smile awkwardly, but Solon gets angry. He asks Healy why he would tell her that, but once again he is blissfully ignored. They move on with the tour, heading to the field. Gino says everyone is busy practicing for the nightball game and the others are probably there. Sooha asks Healy who the others are, and he explains that they usually have a group of 7. He mentions that the 2 who aren't here are taking the game seriously. John joins in, saying those 2 are really competitive and practicing hard. Then he casually adds that their team is going to win anyway. The others give him annoyed looks, clearly tired of his bragging. Sooha takes everything in, walking around like she's in a daze. She asks what kind of sport the nightball game is, and suddenly, a ball comes flying toward her at lightning speed. John quickly hits it back, while Xian, Healy, and Gino rush to protect Sooha. Behind her human, or not-so-human shields, she asks if that was a ball. Jan explains that it's a nightball and calls the players idiots. 2 boys on the field pull away from their teammates and apologize, saying the ball accidentally flew that way, and check if Healy's group is okay. It turns out they are the other 2 boys in their group, Jaka and Noah. Jaka calls out for them to be careful before realizing it's his friends. He says he's relieved the ball went John's way, and Noah agrees. They shout their apologies before going back to their game. John, fuming with anger, calls them unsavory names. Then he turns to Sooha, asking if she's okay, and if it scared her. Oh, but she's fine, safely held in Helly's arms, like nothing else matters in the world. But this is reality, not a fairy tale, so somebody has to snap back to reality. She hesitantly calls Healy's attention, and when he realizes he's still holding her, he quickly pulls back. He apologizes and asks if she's okay. She tells him she is, thanks him, and feels her face heat up. She also thanks everyone for the tour. Healy says she shouldn't mention it because they all had fun. Then she turns and hurries away, waving a quick goodbye. Healy seems confused about her sudden exit, and John wonders if they scared her off. Once she reaches her room, Sooha lets out a sigh of relief. She feels like she almost died from embarrassment. It's her first time being around so many guys. As she tries to gather her thoughts, she hears a voice behind her. She turns around to see the blue-haired pretty boy from earlier, and he smells like trouble. Sooha leans against her door, trying to create as much distance as possible between herself and the blue-haired pretty boy in front of her. Acting like he doesn't notice, he steps closer and asks if she even knows his name. She stammers, searching for a way out, and he presses her to speak. Finally, she asks if his name isn't Solon, since that's what everyone calls him. He just says it's okay and turns to walk away, but she calls out to him, asking him to wait. He turns back and she thanks him for earlier. Confused, he asks what she's talking about, and she explains that she's grateful to him for pulling her back. Earlier on the field, when the ball had almost hit her, Solon had abruptly pulled her back. He is surprised that she noticed, and he claims he didn't do it to save her. He was just brushing dust off her jacket. Still, she thinks it's sweet and thanks him anyway. She hopes they can be friends, but he interrupts, telling her not to think about hanging out with his group. She looks a bit surprised, and he explains that his friends don't socialize with other people, especially someone like her. Inside, Solon thinks there's something strange about Sooha. He feels an unexpected attraction to her, so he turns and begins to walk away, casually reminding her not to talk to him or his friends. Meanwhile, somewhere else in Decilis Academy, Healy and the boys are chatting in a room. Xian says he understands what Healy meant about feeling a strange attraction. Gino adds that Sooha is definitely not their kind. He admits that he can't explain it, but it feels like some mysterious power is controlling his emotions. John jumps in, struggling to describe his feelings, and Helly helps him. He says it feels like he wants to do everything Sooha wants, and the other boys agree in unison that it's precisely how they feel. Xian's face turns red as he wonders if this is what love is, questioning if they've all fallen for her. Gino laughs, saying there's no way they could feel such an emotion, and John agrees, stating it's something much stronger than that. Back in the hallway, Sooha watches Solon walk away, as tears well up in her eyes. She struggles to hold them back, but fails miserably. Solon turns around, shocked to see her crying. She tells him it's okay and that she won't say hi to him again. He gets flustered and insists that she can talk to them if it pleases her. She replies that she won't. He repeats that she can talk to them whenever she likes and that she should do whatever she wants. Finally, he collects himself and tries to explain that when he says she shouldn't hang out with them, it's not because he dislikes her. But before he finishes, he stops himself and tells her to forget what he was going to say. He mentions that there's no point in telling her not to hang out with them because the others won't listen to him anyway. He tells her not to worry about anything he said, and then he bids her good night. Her mood lifts and she smiles as she watches him leave, responding with a soft good night. Several hours later, Sooha gets ready to leave her room, excited that she'd be taking her first class at Decilis Academy. She opens her door and finds Healy waiting outside, and she looks up at him thoroughly surprised. He explains that he waited for her so they could go to class together, since they are now friends. Sooha beams and bounces along beside him, wondering if he was worried she might feel awkward being the new girl. He seems so nice. As they walk, people call out to Healy, and he chats with them. She's surprised by how popular he is, but is it really surprising, though? I mean, he's smoking hot and sweet, not to mention tall. Poor Sooha begins to feel a little down, wondering if he treats everyone like this. He notices her change in mood and asks if he's making her uncomfortable. She quickly reassures him that it's not him, but rather she's worried she's making him uncomfortable. Her face heats up, but she continues speaking. She mentions that they've all been close since childhood and wonders if it's okay for someone like her to just join in. Healy laughs, saying that's ridiculous, and asks if Solon said that. She's surprised he knows, but quickly replies that Solon didn't say that. Healy explains that the blue-haired pretty boy didn't mean any harm and that she shouldn't worry about it. He states that the reason Solon had said that wasn't because of her, and she suddenly recalls Solon struggling to tell her something, but withdrawing at the last moment. Healy tells her that it's because they have a secret, and she jumps back in shock. She asks him if he just spoke to her in her head, and he informs her that she's correct. It's telepathy. He continues to communicate with her mentally, mentioning to her that he's only showing this to her because he trusts her. Speaking out loud, he wishes her good luck in her class. And she's still stunned as she tells him good luck too. When she reaches room 101, Xian welcomes her, excited that they are in the same class. She feels relieved to be sharing a class with him, and he asks her to come sit next to him. She notices some stationery on the desk he's offering her and points out that it has already been taken. He assures her that it's fine and that he will ask Solon to sit somewhere else. A cold sweat quickly breaks out on her face, and she turns around to peek at Solon, who seems to have mysteriously appeared. As she takes a chance to catch a glimpse of Solon's face, she notices the expression he's giving her and hurriedly rejects Xion's offer. She says Solon can keep his seat and that she will find another, but he tells her to forget it. He looks away and states that he will sit somewhere else, urging her to just sit down. He ends up sitting behind her, glaring at the back of her head for the entire class. When the bell rings, Xion asks Sooha what she plans to do now that classes are over. She replies that she is going to clean her room today, explaining that she got some of it done last night, but there's still a long way to go and a bunch of things to throw out too. Xion offers to help her. Suddenly, she hears a voice in her head. She realizes it's Healy. He meets her outside and asks if she enjoyed the classes. She tells him that she did and mentions that she is in the same class as Xion, which made things easier for her. Healy points out that she is also in the same class with Solon. She explains that she sat next to Xion because Solon allowed her to have his seat. This surprises Healy, and he looks down at her in disbelief. At that moment, Solon unexpectedly appears next to them and states that he didn't give his seat to her, rather she stole it from him. Sooha looks at him in disbelief. Just then, John walks up and says it is expected of Solon to give Sooha his seat and that he should mind his manners. Gino agrees, saying that Sooha is new, so they should be nice to her. Xion suggests it's even appropriate for Solon to just stand at the back of the class next time. Our blue-haired pretty boy fumes, glaring at his annoying friends. Standing slightly apart from the rest, Sooha informs Healy that she told the boys she'll be cleaning her room today, and everyone offered to help. Using telepathy, he asks her if he can join, and she replies outwardly that he can come along. Solon watches the two of them suspiciously. When they get to Sooha's room, she finds it difficult to control the boys as they set to work. She tells them that she can do the job herself and tries to stop them from doing too much. John refuses. He mentions to her that she can just stand there and watch while he busies himself with work. Gino says it will only take them a second, and Xion claims cleaning is his favorite thing to do in the world. Solon glares at him, knowing that he is lying. Still, Sooha is flustered. She insists that she wants to help too, so it doesn't feel like she's using them. She offers to carry a box, and when John moves to stop her, she picks it up, asking him why she shouldn't carry it. A sudden clattering sound comes from the box, and she looks down at it in her hands. John freezes in place and says Sooha is not supposed to carry the box because there are 100 kilograms of dumbbells inside it. Her mouth drops open in shock as she realizes they can all see her effortlessly carrying something that heavy. A dead silence envelops the room as all 5 boys stare at the dumbbells in her hands. She panics, knowing that she has exposed her secret, and Healy comes up behind her, offering to take the box from her. With telepathy, he tells her that it's okay because he also has an ability just like hers. He asks her if he scares her, or if she hates him for it. She outwardly replies that she could never hate him for it. Once again, using telepathy, he informs her that it's the same for him and his friends. Solon realizes what is going on and, using telepathy, asks Healy if he just revealed that he can use telepathy to Sooha. Gino breaks out in a cold sweat while Xion and John watch in tense silence. Healy smiles reassuringly and uses telepathy to tell everyone that he had revealed this secret to Sooha earlier that day. It only serves to enrage Solon even more, and John looks horrified. Speaking out, Healy asks Sooha if she would keep this secret, and she agrees that she will. She swears that she won't tell anyone, and Healy says they should both keep their secrets between them. She nods in agreement. He tells her that he thinks her powers are really cool, and she notifies him that his are cool too. She says she was a little surprised at first, but that telepathy is really neat. As the mood in the room seems to relax, Xion appears behind Sooha, sticking to the wall upside down. He shows her that this is his power, and Solon tries to caution him. John follows suit and picks up the dumbbells with his index fingers, explaining that they are actually his and rotating them effortlessly with his index fingers. Once again, Solon tries to caution him as well. Gino hops on the bandwagon, producing fire with his hands, and asks Sooha to tell him whenever her hands get cold as he showcases his power. Her eyes glitter in excitement as she watches their different special abilities. Solon seems thoroughly disappointed in all his friends. When Sooha turns to look at him expectantly, he gets mad at her. He tells her not to stare because he doesn't have anything. She gives him a pitying look, and he realizes that she has misunderstood him. His face heats up, and he hurriedly explains that he has special powers, but he's not going to show them to her. He then tells the others that if they are done cleaning, they should move along. Then he walks away and slams the door. He waits for them outside, his face completely red. Healy takes it as his cue to leave and announces to Sooha that they'll be leaving. He wishes her good night, and she thanks him for today. The rest of them wave goodbye to her and leave. When the door shuts behind her, she feels relieved that she made such nice friends and that she isn't the only one with special powers. Although she wonders if the others felt this way when they saw her, she can't imagine how they all came to have special abilities. She begins to suspect that they might be vampires, but she quickly stops herself. She remembers how she suffered from being misunderstood her whole life, and she decides she's not going to do what those bullies did to her. Healy is the only one who has trusted her since Chris, and she reminds herself that she has to trust him too. She entertains the idea that there can be people like Healy and his friends, just as there's someone like her in this world. She's glad to know that she's not alone anymore. Several hours later, the moon is full outside and the night seems peaceful. We see 4 boys jumping over the fence and breaching Decelis Academy's territory. One of the boys tells his companions that the air reeks of their enemy's stench and angrily asks where the vampires are. The 4 mysterious boys gather together, and the one in front asks if this is the school where the vampires are. He seems to have the angriest look on his face. Meanwhile, Sooha is in her room. She is delighted that her room got cleaned up in the blink of an eye with the help of the boys, as she admires her sparkling room. She remembers that they forgot to take out the trash, so she decides she should throw it away. Furthermore, she steps out with the trash bag. And as she walks along the quiet path, she notes that the way to the dump is a lot darker than she had thought, and also far. Since classes start at 9 p.m. and end around 2 a.m., it gets pretty late whenever she tries to get some things done. She suddenly remembers the words of her guide on the first day she arrived, telling her that there was a murder that happened nearby recently, and rumor says it was the work of a vampire. She suddenly feels frustrated that that conversation would come to her mind now of all times. Likewise, she mutters to herself that she wants to tell people who think that she is a vampire that she is also scared of vampires too. As she gets rid of the trash bag, she decides to hurry back. Suddenly, she feels a looming presence behind her, and a male calls out to her as his hand reaches for her. She sees his hand coming at her, and she dodges, grabbing him and throwing him over her shoulders, slamming him into the ground. She pants, almost out of breath, and asks him who he is and if he is a vampire. Not only that, but she notes that he is wearing a uniform, and 2 other boys run up to her from behind, calling to their companion and asking if he is okay. Sooha fears that they are about to attack her, and one of them actually jumps to take a swing. However, he notices at the last moment that she is a girl and tries to pull back, but it's too late. She catches him with a punch to his stomach, and he falls to the ground. His companion rushes up to him to check if he is okay, and he is surprised to see that a girl took down both of his friends. He asks Sooha what she is, and she responds that she should be the one asking that question. She asks if they are vampires, and the boy recoils, telling her to take back her words because they are not vampires. The final person in the group walks up to them, and boy is he handsome. Those glasses definitely add to his charm. He tells Sooha not to mistake he and his friends for vampires, because that's basically the worst thing she can say to insult them. The boy who had tried to attack her earlier tells her that he can't stand anyone mistaking them for vampires. The youngest in the group mentions to her that the word gives him goosebumps. The first guy who approached Sooha informs her that they hate vampires more than anyone in this world. Her eyes pop in surprise at the venom in his voice as she realizes that this is precisely what she had sounded like the day she had said those words to Healy. She mentions to the boy that she also hates vampires, and then she introduces herself. Moving forward, she apologizes for earlier, saying she was just surprised. The first boy she attacked, Khan, says it's okay, and he equally apologizes for startling her. Then the others take turns introducing themselves. The one with the peach hair tells her his name is Najak, and he apologizes for trying to attack her. The youngest one introduces himself as Tahel, and he points out that Khan and Najak are strong, so there's nothing to worry about. The pretty boy with the glasses finally introduces himself. His name is Enzi. He asks Sooha if they scared her, and then he apologizes. As the boys all laugh along to lighten the mood, Sooha suddenly feels that it's weird because she is always mistaken for a vampire whenever things like this happen. But the boys are all acting like it's no big deal. She addresses Khan and points out that he is not wearing her school uniform, and she asks him what he's doing here. Najak explains that they are from Sunshine City School, and Tahel says they are here to find some punks. The merry lot is interrupted as a voice announces a new presence. The newcomer says he smells something disgusting. It turns out it's not just one, but two newcomers, Jaka and Noah. Jaka asks what they are all doing, gathered around a girl at this hour, and questions the group from Sunshine City School about what they want from one of their students. Noah puts his arm out in front of Sooha to protect her, while she tries to explain what is going on to them. Tahel responds, calling them punks and pointing out that they are one to talk. Endi tries to caution him, and Khan steps forward. He tells Jaka that the murder that took place a few days ago is known to everybody and reveals that the victim was a student from his school, his eyes glowing with hatred. Sooha trembles in fear as the news hits her. However, Noah and Jaka remain calm and even seem unbothered. Jaka asks what that has to do with them, which sends Tahel into a growl of anger. He tells Jaka not to play dumb with them, and Jaka tosses his jacket aside, appearing suddenly excited. He tells Tahel that it seems the murder has something to do with them instead, causing all four boys to emit uncontrollable bloodlust and anger. Khan asks Jaka if he's sure he won't regret what he has just said. Jaka arrogantly points out that the Sunshine City School guys came here under the bright moon because they know they wouldn't normally have a chance against them. Najak growls and rushes to attack, and Jaka does not hesitate either. He makes a dash for the other boy. Suddenly, Sooha appears between them, stretching out her arms to stop them. She tells them not to fight, but Najak growls, revealing sharp teeth as his eyes turn red. Jaka, on his part, is completely shocked that Sooha was able to stop him. He wonders how she is so strong. Noah comes up behind her and tells her they had assumed the boys from the other school were messing with her, but Sooha explains that they weren't. It was only a small misunderstanding, so nobody should fight. Noah and Jaka seem to freeze at her words. A voice comes from behind all of them, announcing another presence. They all turn around to see Healy, who asks what they are all doing out here at this hour. The boys from Sunshine City regard him with cold looks. Suddenly, he sees Sooha and his expression changes. He tells everybody to step away from her immediately. Sooha is surprised to see Healy. She tells him there was a little misunderstanding while she was taking out the trash, and he continues to step forward. He gets close to her, concern written all over his face, and asks if she's okay. She reassures him that she's fine, and he replies with relief that he's glad she is. Then he suggests they hurry back inside, stating that it's not safe for her to be out at this hour. He offers to walk her to her room. However, she turns back to glance at the boys from Sunshine City School. She attempts to ask Healy to wait, but Khan beats her to the punch. His words cut through the air as he asks Healy who gave him permission to leave, and stating that he isn't done talking yet. Healy turns to regard Khan with cold, challenging eyes. In a firm voice, he notifies Khan that he is, in fact, done talking, suggesting that Khan and his boys should get off his campus right now. Khan doesn't mince words. He accuses Healy and his friends of being involved in the death of a student from Sunshine City School. Healy shakes his head, insisting that Khan has the wrong person. Najak interjects, asking if that's all Healy has to say in his defense. Noah chimes in, defending his group by stating that they wouldn't do something as horrible as that. Tahel, however, challenges them with a pointed question. He asks if they can prove that they didn't do it. In response, Jaka counters, asking Tahel if he can offer any proof that they are the ones responsible for the crime. Khan confidently reveals that they wouldn't have come here if they didn't have evidence. Healy adopts a nonchalant air, shrugging off the accusation. He retorts that even if it truly was he and his friends who committed the act, what could Khan and his boys actually do about it? Sooha stares at him in shock, taken aback by his bravado. Tahel, unable to contain himself any longer, rushes forward, declaring that he always knew it was Healy and his friends who were guilty. Healy turns to confront Tahel, but Sooha quickly intervenes, placing a hand on Healy's chest to stop him. She pleads with him not to fight and turns to the other boy, urging him to stay back. Tahel halts in his tracks, glaring at Healy with obvious hostility. Just like that, Healy's demeanor shifts once again. He begins to act sweetly, offering up an apologetic smile as he turns to Sooha. He sincerely promises not to fight and expresses regret for scaring her. Finally, he turns to Khan and explains why he and his friends might be viewed as suspects. He fervently swears that they are not the ones responsible and hopes that Khan believes him. Tahel interjects again, questioning Healy about why he would expect them to simply trust him. Healy responds that they do not have to believe him outright, but they should refrain from fighting here because it is scaring Sooha. Khan and his friends glare at Healy, considering the situation anew. In an effort to reduce the tension, Healy suggests that if they are determined to fight, perhaps they could settle their differences at the upcoming nightball tournament. He suggests resolving their issues through the spirit of sportsmanship rather than through a fist fight, flashing a hopeful smile. However, Khan does not seem ready to back down just yet. Finally, he turns to Sooha and tells her that he and his group will only leave for her sake, adding an apologetic note for startling her earlier. Afterward, he directs his attention back to Healy, stating firmly that the incident has nothing to do with the nightball game. He cautions Healy and his friends to behave, promising that he will be keeping a watchful eye on all of them. As an afterthought, he expresses his anticipation for crushing Healy in the nightball game. Healy responds confidently, stating that he and his friends will remain vigilant. Khan then shifts his focus to his friends, announcing that they are leaving. Tahel appears reluctant to go, voicing his frustration as he asks Khan if they are really just going to leave things unresolved, grumbling all the way as Khan begins to walk away. As the werewolves exit, Najak expresses his anger that Healy believes his team will win this year's nightball game as well. He asserts that everyone on their team will be back for this game, insisting that they stand a real chance at beating Healy's group. As they watch the others leave, Healy asks Sooha if they should get going, and she agrees. Together, their little group begins to head back inside. Once they enter the hallway, he apologizes for almost getting into a fight in front of her, and she tells him not to apologize because he stopped right when she told him to. She says that's all that matters. Inwardly, she thinks about the strange, almost disaster that occurred earlier. At that moment when Heli had turned to face Tahel, even though he hadn't done anything yet, she felt compelled to stop him. It was as if something terrible would have happened if she didn't. She glances at him, feeling a variety of emotions. Somewhere else on the Decelis Academy grounds, we see Solon facing the full moon with an arm outstretched. His fingernails elongate and icy blue fur begins to spread across his arms. He looks worried and upset as he watches his body change. Suddenly, from behind him, he hears a voice. It's Enzi. He isn't surprised that Solon is a werewolf. He says they have met before. Then he introduces himself and points out that Solon is of mixed race. Sit tight because things just got a lot more complicated. Solon steps away from the lone werewolf, telling Enzi that he is not one of them. In reply, Enzi says that there's no need for Solon to hide it because he saw everything that just transpired. Putting that aside, he asks how a mix of vampire and werewolf is even possible. given that the two races have historically been enemies and are innately opposed to one another. He asks Solon how, against all odds, his existence came to be. Typical, Solon gets defensive. He asks Enzi about why he should give out such personal information. The werewolf shrugs and responds that Solon is not obligated to share anything. He emphasizes that he simply asked out of curiosity, nothing more. In a subtle shift in the conversation, Solon probes Enzi about what he is doing in their school at this hour, a place that typically echoes with silence at night. Enzi explains that he came to consult their group regarding a matter of grave concern. His eyes darken as he mentions the recent murder that has cast a shadow over the community. He reveals that the victim was a student from Sunshine City School. With a serious tone, he continues, explaining that there was a sharp bite mark on the victim's neck, and shockingly, all the blood had been entirely drained from his body. Solon's eyes narrow as he processes this information. He asks Enzi where he is going with his explanation, suspicion creeping into his voice. As he realizes what is going on, he asks Enzi in disbelief if he is suggesting that his group of friends is somehow involved in the murder. Enzi replies that in this area it is only Solon's group who is capable of such a thing. Solon angrily replies that he and his friends do not engage in activities like that. He admits that he would be lying if he claims they have never felt the urge. But then again, the same goes for the werewolves, especially on nights like tonight when the full moon shines brightly in the sky. Enzi acknowledges that Solon is right because when the full moon is up, werewolves feel an intensified urge to return to their natural instincts. However, he emphasizes that he and his friends do not harm humans. Solon echoes this sentiment, insisting that the same is true for his friends. They are not like the other vampires. From his perspective, the other vampires are different from them. Enzi asks him why he thinks they are different. Solon pauses, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. He then reminds Enzi of his curiosity regarding his mixed heritage, half vampire and half werewolf. He says that his very existence should answer all of Enzi's questions. Though he admits he does not know how he came to be, nor do his friends possess any answers about their existence. It feels as if they were either created in some mysterious manner or awakened from a long, deep dream. Finally, he tells Enzi that the recent murder has nothing to do with him and his group of friends. He explains that people may lump them in with other vampires, but he and his friends do not identify with the other vampires. They see themselves as entirely separate from them. When he notices the expression on Enzi's face, he adds that he doesn't expect Enzi to believe him if he doesn't want to. He clarifies that he is not begging for his trust. Enzi simply smiles and replies that he hopes Solon is telling the truth, considering that Solon is, after all, also a werewolf like him. Just then, the sound of approaching voices reaches them. Enzi's friends are nearby, searching for him and wondering where he has wandered off to all by himself. In a hurry, he tells Solon that he will be taking his leave. He adds that the next time they run into each other, he hopes Solon will at least acknowledge him. With that, he bids Solon goodbye and departs. Solon stands frozen to the spot, arms outstretched as if he had wanted to shake Enzi's hand before he leaves. Realizing what he was about to do, he clenches his fist in anger. Our poor blue-haired pretty boy has been left hanging. Back inside the academy hallway, the boys walk Sooha up to her room door, and she thanks them for accompanying her. Healy suggests that they should take out the trash together next time, especially when it's late at night, and she replies that it sounds like a good idea. Turning to Noah and Jaka, she expresses her gratitude for their earlier intervention, asking if they came by to help after hearing all the commotion. They nod in affirmation, confirming her assumption. Sooha then glances at Healy and asks how he had known she was there. He explains that he was just passing by, and she is thankful for his timely arrival. An unmistakable warmth fills her, and she tries to tell him that she is genuinely happy he stopped by, but she quickly catches herself and instead says goodnight. She turns to bid Jaka and Noah goodnight as well, offering them a sincere smile. Once she's gone, Jaka and Noah pounce on Healy. Using telepathy, they ask him who Sooha is because she left a very memorable first impression. Healy explains that she's a new student who transferred a few days ago, and they haven't really had the chance to be properly introduced to her. Jaka asks what her deal is because he knows the girl is definitely not an ordinary human. He briefly explains that when he and Noah were walking back after nightball practice, they felt an unusually strong wave, and she was at the center of it. Furthermore, he mentions that it was such an overwhelming wave that he had never felt before, and Noah agrees with him. He says that when Sooha had stopped them from fighting, they both froze. It was as if her words actually bound them in place. Jaka asks Healy if she is one of them, and he replies that she is not. With a sad expression on his face, he tells them how Sooha hates vampires more than anyone else in this world. Inside her room, Sooha runs the events of the night over and over in her mind. She thinks about how Khan had accused Healy and his friends of committing a murder that was allegedly done by vampires. She begins to wonder if he and his friends are really involved in the incident. Furthermore, she remembers Chris lying in a coffin with bite marks on his neck, and all she can think of is how much she hates vampires more than anything in the world. Enjoying this manhwa so far? Comment Sooha below. Also, please support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until next time, ciao!